Hi everyone, by the way. I'm Jamie. Nice to see
Hi, Jamie. Nice to see you.
you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just let a couple of people settle in and welcome to this webinar this afternoon. As I say, we'll just a bit of housekeeping before we start, which I'll come on to in just a while. I'll just make sure as many people as in the waiting room can get in, and then we'll start properly. So just a few minutes before we kick off. Just to let everybody know who has just joined, this session is being recorded so that it can go out live after the session. And thank you for joining us this afternoon. So if I can introduce myself and then I'll introduce other members of the panel, but let them tell you a little bit more about themselves just to kick off this session. My name's Dr. Anne Mulhaney. I'm the Associate Professor of Change Management at the University of Salford's Centre for Sustainable Innovation. And I've been involved with Help to Grow now for the 5 years it's been running. And prior to that was part of the curriculum team who developed the content. And as we know, through being through the programme yourself, you know how much it is really tailored for our audience, really, for the small business owners. So today, this session as well is really targeted for you. We're looking at accreditation in action, and really what that means is how standards such as B Corp or ISO or other standards help organisations to scale, but also the benefits it provides to you for having these accreditations. On the panel with me this afternoon, I've got Matthew Bell from Buttress, who is a B Corp accredited organisation. I've got Jamie Harrison, Paul Coverdale from Pollinators, and I've also got Lee Parnell, who's Managing Director at Preston Technical. So welcome everyone. And it's Friday already, thank goodness. It's so busy this week. So if I could just go around each of you and just ask you to say a little bit about yourself, your business, and a little bit about your experience with topic of accreditations. So if we could start with you, Matthew, is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Anne. Hello everyone. My name is Matthew Burma, Director and an architect at Buttress Architects. We're an 80-strong practice based in Manchester and Leeds, and we work nationally. We have strong focus on housing, heritage, and community-led projects. I led our B Corp journey through certification and recent recertification, where we recently achieved a score of 141, which places us amongst some of the highest scoring architectural practice in the UK, which has been great. I think it's been a really important part of shaping how we measure our impact as a business, not just through our projects, but also how we operate. And I've been closely involved in embedding that across the whole business over the last few years, alongside our transition to being an employee-owned business.
That's great. Thank you, Matthew. Paul, can I hand over to you and let you introduce yourself and say a little bit about your company?
Of course, thank you, Anne, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. So I'm Paul Coverdale. I'm co-founder of a company called The Pollinators with Jamie, who you'll hear from in a second. We put the business together around 4 years ago. We actually help, amongst other things, we empower, we enable SMEs in particular to become B Corps. We are one ourselves, and so we are heavily involved in this space, and we absolutely love it. So we're delighted to be part of this webinar today because it very much sits within exactly what we do. We also did Help to Grow ourselves. So we're an alumni. We did it 2 years ago at the University of Winchester. So there's a nice double link to the audience today.
Oh, lovely introduction. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Jamie.
Oh, fabulous. Well, I think Paul's beautifully explained what it is that we do. I guess just to add to that as well, I also sit on the chair of the Be Local community in Hampshire, Dorset on the Isle of Wight. So a big part of what it means to be a B Corp is how can we galvanise change within the community, support each other, inspire each other, and work with local organisations. So I have the privilege of getting to volunteer in that role. And it's a huge part of what we do as the pollinators. I guess just to add what Paul's saying there is making things tangible, relevant, right for you. That's the key thing of any accreditation. The first question always to ask yourself is it the right thing for me as a business? How is it going to help me grow? How is it going to help me energize the mission that you really want to deliver on? And that's always the starting point for anything moving forwards. And a part of what we do as well is climate and nature education for communities and for businesses, because fundamentally it's really important for all of us to understand the passions that we have and how we can mobilize that with our businesses. And some of that science starts with education. Thank you, Anne.
That's great, Jamie. I know you've all got an awful lot to share, so I'm looking forward to delving a little bit deeper in that. Lee, would you like to introduce yourself? And Lee has a slightly different slant because not B Corp as an organisation, but really heavy on other alternative accreditations. So welcome to the team. Say hello, Lee.
Hello, thank you, Anne. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm Lee Parnell. I'm Managing Director of Preston Technical Limited. We're a tape converter, which I won't bore you with the details, but we cut tape up and make it easy to use, basically. That's all you need to know. We're about 35 years old as a business. I've been here 30 years. I know I don't look old enough, but the standards predate my or the start of the standards predate my employment with the company. We've had ISO 9001 since '96. We've got ISO 14001 and 45001 since 2018, and we previously had US 9000, which was a precursor to IATF 16949, which is the industry automotive standard. So yes, we've had plenty of experience with it, and I'm looking forward to sharing and answering some of your questions.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Just on that note then, a little bit more housekeeping before we go on. If you do have any questions, and we really do welcome your questions, if you can use the Q&A function on the Zoom call, that would be amazing. So we do have the chat facility as well, and please do introduce yourself to each other using the chat facility. Say who you are, say hello. It's other people who are on this webinar this afternoon. But if you want to specifically ask the panel a specific question that we're not answering through our own discussions, please feel free to add that to the Q&A session. That'd be great. So let's dive into some questions then. So you've introduced yourselves, you've all talked a little bit about the accreditations you have or helping in the pollinators example, other organisations to get. But what was the rationale really for why you went down the accreditations route? What did you see at the beginning as being the benefits of that? And how did it happen? So if I could go back to you, please, Matt, is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I think what motivated us a little bit was around it helped formalize something that was already kind of embedded in what we were doing as practice. I think there's always been a strong belief in Buttress that architecture carries a responsibility beyond the project, and we were increasingly recognizing that our clients were wanting us to help them solve problems around, that they have around ESG, and in particular around their environmental performance. And I think they're looking for clearer evidence in that area. So that was something that we looked at quite closely as a motivator. So yeah, we wanted that externally kind of verified framework that B Corp is. It would test our claims and give us credibility, I think, about what we were saying about purpose, because we were saying and doing the right things, but it gave us that extra element of credibility. So it wasn't necessarily, well, at the time we also thought it would be about differentiation within the marketplace, although that wasn't a key driver. But since becoming a B Corp, we help support and advocate for B Corp such that we hope that it's not a differentiator, that there are lots of practices within the built environment who are that. So yeah, it really timed really well, aligned with us, brought things together in a way that um, other things couldn't. It's rigorous, it's internationally recognized. It's a great way of measuring impact. And I think it also internally, it gave us a kind of internal language and a way of communicating with each other about the things we do. It brought a lot of things together internally around help our operations and help us talk about responsibility we have. So they were the main kind of reasons and context.
Yeah, real right thing at the right time. So real good thing. Yeah, brilliant. If I could go back to Paul and Jamie, and really, I mean, you've got twofold here. You've got the fact that you're a B Corp organisation yourselves, but also helping other organisations. So I suspect you hear from lots of organisations different reasons why it's important to them, specifically in different industries. But tell us your story first. You know, I know you have to do what you do to be able to then help others. But what was your first rationale for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great question, Anne. Thank you for that. Um, for us, it's so Paul and I come from very different kind of workplace backgrounds. Paul's background is very much more from an environmental science point of view. My background is very much in kind of business coaching, strategy, and that side of support, and kind of climate and nature education. So very different backgrounds. And the reason that we've both separately kind of chose to upskill within this B Corp space is currently, and there is actually always a hope that there is a genuine competitor to something like B Corp coming into the market, because as we all know, the more competition that exists in the market for that space, the heavier people go on how can it be improved. There's more inspiration available. But currently, it's the only kind of accreditation that is looking holistically at a business. So everything from why do you do what you do? What's your mission? How is that embedding? Matt's beautifully talked around embedding that change, that consistent evolution. That's a really big part of what B Corp is. It's making sure you're not just ticking a box. It's around how are you truly living and breathing that and using it as a foundation to springboard off of. And I guess to add to what Matt was saying is B Corp doesn't see itself as the highest level that you can get to. It sees itself as a really great grounded foundation that then you as a business can use to go further. And that's why it's constantly evolving. So there are new standards that actually landed this week from B Corp, which are then, I won't go into too much detail now, but it shifts so it's third party verified. So it's aligned with things like ECGT that's come out of the EU. So it's like this empowering green clarity from empowering green transition. And it's a really healthy shift. So for us as individuals, we've both chosen to upskill in this space, the B Corp, because it did have that holistic overview from why do you do what you do, how are you looking at environment and nature and what that really means to you as a business. How are you seeing your staff as human beings and part of a whole rather than a cog in just like this wider piece. Who are your customers? Why are their lives better off for you being a part of their kind of world of existence? And community, very much, our supply chains are a big part of our impact, kind of globally, nationally, locally. But also, how do we engage with smaller community bubbles? Is there any philanthropic work that you're doing? So it's really taking every aspect of a business and going, fantastic, how can you mobilize that for a good impact? So that's what kind of created that curiosity for Paul and I. And we actually came together to start working on B Corp with the pollinators when we set it up 4 years ago, just to make everything a lot more accessible so that there isn't the barriers to enacting change. And one of the key things that I know Paul won't mind me saying that we both love about it is that you can learn from B Corp and the framework without having to become B Corp certified. Absolutely, there are benefits to exploring the accreditation, and we can talk about that later. But the actual framework and the knowledge, that's a free resource. Anyone can access it, because the whole desire of the community and the network that exists globally is to mobilize change. And business has an incredible opportunity to do that.
It sounds like it very much fits with your sort of values of your business as well, by the way you can see by the passion in how you talk about this, how it really aligns with like your values and your business values, I suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Lee, you mentioned before You know, your accreditations predate you, so there was no such thing as B Corp when you were looking for certifications some years ago. Just tell us a bit more about that journey for Preston Technical, and really, you know, the why and the journey, because you've mentioned quite a few accreditations there.
Yeah, I think as somebody mentioned, I think the important question is why. I think that's the big thing. Why are you doing it? I think you need to understand why you're doing it. And if I take our experience, obviously we're not B Corp. We're a manufacturing company. I suspect there aren't a lot of manufacturing companies B Corp at this particular moment in time, but I expect it'll grow. But when we got ISO 9001, we were a very young business. We weren't even 5 years. Well, we weren't even 5 years when we got the accreditation. So when we started it, we were much sooner than that. But effectively, we were bullied into it by a big US corporate company that was basically dangling a load of work in front of our noses and saying, it's here if you want it, but you have to get it. And the same thing happened with the QS 9000, which was the automotive standard. We knew it wasn't right for our business at that particular time, but we were bullied into doing it, and we did it. And I think that created a little bit of a negative sort of mindset to it within the business. And I think it was a case of, we have to have it. So it was a case of playing lip service to it in the early days and getting this certificate on the wall. And I think that's important to say. There are people out there who have certifications who just want the certificate on the wall. But I think what we learned over the years was it's a tool to help you. So why not dive into it and why not use it? And we probably had it coming up for 10 years and until we really started to realize it was going to benefit us. And then that's when we changed. So the decision to go for the ISO 14000 and 45000, which is environmental and health and safety for anyone who might not know, but that was a proactive decision. That was a business decision that I made because I wanted to get ahead of the curve, because you could see the way things are going. In the mid-90s, everybody asked you for your 9001 certificate. Barely anyone asks you for that now. It's hardly even mentioned. I think people kind of assume you have it. But I just felt that, particularly in the automotive industry, there was going to be a lot of people asking for environmental standards. And I think the way we approached it was we just got our ducks in a row before we even attempted to get certified for it. So it's just starting to do the right things and understanding the standards. And you know, within our industry, there is a standard IATF 16949, which is basically the automotive standard, and you can't operate in the automotive world without the standard, basically. But when you lower down the tiers, it's not necessarily conducive to good business operations if all your business is not automotive. So we're in the middle of a decision about whether to go fully for that standard. So yeah, we've got a few bits of paper.
It's a good thing to sort of consider as a strategic driver, really. You know, as you say, there is, and it sort of leads into my next question. There's a lot of effort required to go down these routes of accreditations, and getting ducks in a row and understanding how it fits and aligns with that business strategy, I think, is really critical. So if I just nip back to you, Matthew, you mentioned a little bit earlier why Buttress decided to do this, because it was, you know, going to let you stand out in your industry. But what were the challenges early days, and how did you overcome some of those?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to lean into a little bit what Jamie said there about you don't have to get the accreditation. You can just have a go and see where you are in terms of the points range, and see how much you have to do. That was really important, and it kind of addressed the challenge that we didn't know it was for us. Well, let's have a look. So dipping your toe in the water, first of all, is actually pretty important. We did that, and it took half a day for someone to run it, and yeah, we thought, oh, okay, well, actually that's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. We can do this. So actually, some of the barriers are things that you think, there's going to be a lot of things we're going to have to change, a lot of things we're going to have to do. But I think part of that addressing that was talking to people, talking to other B Corps, and talk to others that are in the process. And I'd really advocate for that in starting the conversation, because there is a great network out there, and that was really helpful to us to understand whether it was for us. Then I think next challenge I had was convincing the rest of the board at the time. Why is it for us, and why will it make a difference? So, thinking hard about that, presenting, getting alignment, and then we had to align once we got board agreement, which was great. We had to engage the whole practice. This couldn't be done by just one person, and it couldn't actually be done properly without really leaning into the whole practice and get their thoughts on how we could use B Corp as a force for good. So we had an evening in a B Corp bar in Manchester, which was good fun. So B Corp beer and B Corp food and the rest of it to launch it. Once we made the decision and we gathered people's thoughts, we had someone from the B Local talk to us, and it was great. And then we got that kind of spirit of, yeah, we should definitely do this, and it's great. And people put their hands up and want to get involved, and that was great. So you put a little team together, and then you start the process of gathering the information that you need for the accreditation. And I don't think you should underestimate. There is a lot of work. There is. It is a challenge. It goes into areas where you don't expect it to go, and it does challenge you. It exposes gaps, which can be a bit uncomfortable sometimes, but actually is a positive thing. Started to collect all the data and metrics that you needed. So yeah, having a committed internal group was really good. That gave us momentum. Having the support of the board was really good too.
I was just going to say that. I think, that you did the right thing with getting the leadership board on board. And then, it only works well when the whole team are behind all of this and understand what the benefits can be. It is that holistic, as Jamie said before, view of your organisation. So it will sort of get you to look under stones and look around corners. And it's okay to have gaps, because then you can put plans together to address some of those things. So if we go back to Paul and Jamie, some people ask, and I know we've got a question in the chat, I'll come back to that in just a second. Some people ask, is it easier to start yourself or get some advice? I know there's a big community around B Corp, which is great to tap into in that network. But what would be your experience and your advice really when starting off on this pathway? Either one of you, wherever you go.
I think we'll both answer this a little bit, because I'll kind of jump in a bit from the chair point of view there. So that's the way you start is with that question I almost asked earlier, is why do you want to do this? What's the intent behind it? It was designed to be something that took into account global legislation change, global industry shifts. It's not a standalone piece. So we touched today about kind of new standards coming in, and that's a big part of what's driven that, is saying, actually, what do businesses need to exist to be resilient in 2028, 2030, 2035? What's that going to look like? And continuing almost that conversation of that I think we all like to sit on, and it's almost the elephant in the room. Profit's not a dirty word when it comes to this type of topic. It is not, because you cannot mobilize donations, changes in industry, additional research and support without a healthy, resilient business. So one of the key things that we kind of love to have with all of this is it's a lens that you're looking at. So what these sorts of different conversations bring to life is that this isn't a separate piece that you're looking at for your business. It's a lens that you're looking through for decisions that you will be making about your company anyway, investigations and curiosities that you will be looking at. It's not an entirely separate piece of work. And also it's not separate to things like ISO. They all have, really great needs, and they add value to it. B Corp kind of is one of the things of B Corp, is it takes all of that into account, especially things like the new ISO that's come out in October last year, which is very exciting to see land on biodiversity and how biodiversity net gain is landing within businesses. So that's 17298 if anyone's ever interested in that. So that's kind of part of that piece. So as a chair of a Be Local, and I know Matt kind of touched on Be Local was part of it, this community element is a great starting point. This curiosity of, go and talk to people, find out information, go on the website and have a look. But before you do any of that, it very much needs to be, why do you want to get started in the first place? What is it going to do to add value? But I know Paul's got a great thing on that, so I'll pass over to him.
Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, I mean, Matthew's approach that he described for Buttress is the sort of thing that we advocate for all the time, to go and talk to people and to get buy-in at all levels of the business as well. But I think once you've made that commitment that, yeah, this is right for us, it feels right for us, now let's go and explore. It's like buying a big box of Lego, whereby you buy it and there's clearly a thing you can make, and there's some instructions about how to do that. But actually, you can make it in any which way you want. And actually, that's the exciting part. When you start to explore a framework such as B Corp and you look at it and thinking, what can we do? But actually also, what are we doing already? Because you will probably find that you are doing a considerable amount already. So rather than it being this big sort of nebulous thing in front of you where you're not really sure exactly what's going to be involved or how long it might take, and so on. You can break it down and think, gosh, well, we're doing a lot of good already, and you probably are, because you wouldn't be interested in pursuing this path in the first place if you weren't. And that can really, really, really help as an approach. But then do the things that feel right for you and are aligned with the way that you want to take your business. So there'll be some obvious things that you want to do. There might be some blind spots. You think, yeah, we've been meaning to get around to do that, and this is now going to compel us to do so. But there'll be other things that you're not doing and you're still not going to do, and that's okay. That is completely fine. It's not feeling as though you're shoehorned into taking action that doesn't feel right for you as a business at all. That's really not what it's all about.
Yeah.
I guess to answer your specific question around like how do you get started, yes, you could absolutely go and start on your own, exactly like Matthew's done, and have a brilliant result. And you can absolutely get support, and that's kind of, it's our passion, it's what we love to do. Paul and I are both what's called B leaders, so this is something that we have chosen to specialize in. And the way that we see it is that the support that you can get is there to guide you, it's there to empower you with knowledge, it's there to give clarity at different decision points. It is not to do it for you. That's never the intent from somebody there to partner with you on this process. Whether it's how we approach it, how other people approach it, the intent is very much always about empowering that. To Matthew's really key point about embedding it, if someone does it for you, it's much harder to embed that as a piece of change.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think the themes that are coming out here are the why, what is the real reason why you're doing this, and building that into your strategic planning. And then the how sort of falls out of that, which is fundamentally, as long as it takes for your needs. And it was something pre this webinar, I think you and I spoke about, Lee. It doesn't have to be rushed either, does it? I know you took a little while for all of your accreditations for the right reasons. Do you want to talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I walked into a drawing office at 17 years old when it was BS 5750, and they were having an audit. I didn't even know what it was, and one of the 60-plus-year-old draftsmen was shouting Judas at the auditor as he walked up and down, because he felt like he was having his 40 years of experience big brothered and people looking and judging him, and that was a real big lesson for me, because I think that if you're not a particularly structured business for a start, if you do start to put structure in, then you need to make sure you've pre-sell that to your employees. Otherwise, they're going to think it's all about control and they're going, big brother watching you, etc., etc. So I think as much as you need top level buy-in in an organization for it, it starts at the top but it goes straight to the bottom, and I think you've got to win the hearts and minds of your staff before you even start to do anything, and that's probably 50% of the battle, in my opinion. I don't know what the rest of you think, but yeah, say what you do and do what you say is the mantra that we always did, and it's just about, if you can start if you're not documenting things, just start by documenting a few things, some of your main processes, some of your main day-to-day activities. If you just start writing down the best practice for those, you'll find that that helps you in the standards at some point, I think. So that'd be my advice.
And timing is up to you, really, isn't it? There's no pressure from anyone on that kind of thing. It's your industry that might pressurize you into some of those things rather than yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I guess take your time at the beginning, because once you've got the accreditation, then there is a time involved, because you have certain times when you're having to get reaccredited. So there is a particular deadline there.
Yeah. We've got a couple of questions. I think some of them are linked to sort of some of the conversations we're having. So, the first one there from Carrie says, are there any barriers to accreditation, such as if you work in a particular sector, will that hold you back? Would anyone like to take that one?
Sorry, I thought Paul was going to jump
No,
on that.
I was going
Okay,
to.
you're
I the right one. B Corp is for everyone. There are 160 industries represented across the community. Whatever you happen to do as a business, you should be eligible. Now, that saying, of course, B Corp is a standard for sustainable, progressive, great businesses, and there are some industries that are clearly not that. And so it's not an accreditation that will just allow anybody in. But honestly, if you were, for example, a fossil fuel business, you're unlikely to be wanted to go for this in any case, whether you can achieve it or not. So there are some things around that, there's a grey area. There's a few things that are black and white, but there's a lot that is a grey area, and there's quite a lot of guidance about that. So particularly, I think if you're a service business and you have clients in a range of different industries, it's worth investigating how that might affect what you wish to, whether you wish to be able to proceed. So, no, I'd be wrong to say anyone can be a B Corp, because that simply isn't true. But the vast majority of industries and businesses that work in those industries very much can.
That's really good advice, I think.
Yeah, I guess kind of baseline criteria, just to give complete clarity, is you just have to be a for-profit enterprise. You can't be a charity, and you need to be older than 12 months. So you have to have existed in some way for more than 12 months, and that's purely because of exactly what Matthew and Paul have kind of touched on, the process that you go through. It isn't oh yeah, we can do that and we can do this. You're asked for evidence. So to evidence it, obviously you need to have existed as a company for a certain period of time to be able to provide that evidence to the analysts, so they can go, oh great, yeah, I can see that you're not just saying that you're going to be doing that. I can see that you are actually doing what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, isn't it? Being the more you're informed about what these things are, I think the more you can make that decision about, is it right for us, and are we ready for it right now? And it is in all cases a great thing just to do that sort of self-audit at the beginning to see where you are and then make that decision going forward.
If I may add as well, I think that's a really great point that you've just made around, are you ready? You're talking earlier about barriers. The biggest barrier that we see to people is people go, oh no, I'm not ready. I'm not big enough. I'm too small. I'm in the wrong industry. Oh, I've got to get this sorted first before I do any of these other bits and pieces. And I would ask you to pause in that. If your head's gone down that route, just take a moment to pause. The majority of B Corps in the UK are under 10 people in size. The movement in the UK is the fastest growing, biggest community that exists globally. So there are nearly 3,000 B Corps in the UK. There are nearly 10,000 globally. And that has been absolutely energized by the micro and small business community. So this is not just talking about kind of large corporations, big industry leaders. We're talking about businesses, all of my businesses are B Corp. There's two of us in it. So you don't have to be these big, vast people. And it's not about you don't have to have everything ready and sorted. It's not about kind of getting all your ducks in a row and ready to go. It's about saying, actually, you're interested and you're intrigued about something, exploring how your business could be resilient and how it could act a bit differently. Fantastic. Then start using this as that progress for change. Actually, the best time to become B Corp certified is if you're looking at changing your kind of strategic focus as a business, because it can give you some great questions that healthily challenge you to go, okay, we're not doing this. do we think this is something that would actually land well for us and add value to where we want to be in the next 5 years?
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. That's really good insight. And just going back to the questions in the Q&A, I'm going to come back to yours, Jenny. I've not missed it. I'm just going to go to Mark's because I think it's just aligned with where we've just been, which says, so what's involved in the certification process? So seeing you've been through it, Matthew, could you start with sort of your insight into that, and then we'll come back maybe to Jamie to just close the loop as well.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I think the first thing is to run the assessment tool and answer the questions as honestly as possible in terms of where you are now. Don't think about, oh yeah, we could do that, therefore I'll tick that box. Think about it from exactly where you are at the moment. Then you've got a baseline. You're also able to see how much information you might have to gather to be able to evidence it. Evidence sounds like such a big thing. You got to evidence everything. Well, yeah, there is evidence required in certain areas in relation to HR people, in relation to environmental aspects, the 5 pillars as they are the old certification system. But it's probably things you've already got. You've got policies. Every company needs policies written down. It needs has documents that essentially just need to be uploaded to the system to provide that evidence. But of course there'll be things that you don't have, and to Jenny's point, I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that. I'll have a go. We had it in terms of our waste streams. Now we're an architectural company. We don't have anything particularly toxic within the practice, but we had to move our waste collections into a company that collected waste and could provide us with the proper documentation, the weights of everything, and that's so that we could then evidence how much of it was being recycled, etc. So that was but that was good. That makes us do things in a different way, such that we're then conscious of what we're using, where it's going, how it's being recycled. So again, that changes the way that we in-house that we do things. So yeah, I mean that once you've then, just to continue on to Mark's point, involved in this, what's further involved, once you begin to gather the evidence, you're then in the process of working through the different areas of the certification process to provide that evidence. And we just simply started with one area. I think we started with governance, worked on that, found that we were working through that, moved into the next section, and just kept moving through it. And once you're ready, you can press submit. You submit everything. You don't need to be perfect at that point, and that's a great lesson that we learned. We thought first time around we had to have everything evidenced and everything ready and absolutely perfect. What you find is that the first the certification kind of analysis that you're provided, there's an analyzer that's provided to you. They look at essentially making sure that there is enough evidence, and you've got certain things in place. And then once you've done that, you go through to the next stage, and the next analyst looks for information that they could seek in a bit more detail. So they do a bit more of a deeper dive, but not across everything, across probably the areas that you're targeting for the most points. So there are a lot of checks that they undertake, and they could choose, like any audit, they could choose any area. So it's good to be as ready as possible, but it's typically the high value areas that they have a look at. You then supply that additional information. There's a telephone interview. It's quite rigorous again, checking process, and then they finalize your score, and that's it. But it's it's so yes. I think we all like to say it is rigorous. It is. It absolutely is. It is a deep dive across the whole of the business. But I think it's manageable for any scale of business, and you can continue to operate your day to day without having to do this one thing, and you can take your time. There's no rush. You can take your time.
I think you've got the same experience as well, Lee, with all the accreditations you've got, it's a step-by-step process, isn't it? And it will uncover gaps along the way, but they're things that you can then sort of work on and improve, which always then leads to that continuous improvement of your organisation anyway. And I think one of the questions most people on this webinar this afternoon will ask, we're all talking about help to grow management, but helping to grow your organisation, accreditations are there to sort of help amplify how good you are as an organisation across the board. What sort of benefits can you see on the other side? What has it actually given to you to help you grow and nurture your business? So I'll start with Lee, and then I'll come back to you, Matt, and then I'll go back to you, Paul and Jamie, just to see some more examples from yourself, but from also your clients' organisations as well. So Lee, if I start with you.
Yeah, I think in the early days, I don't necessarily. It was a case of we wouldn't have got work off a customer if we hadn't got it. So obviously, clearly, that helped us grow the business.
Yeah.
And I think that the important ones for me were the health and safety standard, because I didn't feel like there was the right culture in the business, the right mindset about health and safety in the business. And so what we did was, rather than go for the standard straight away, we started to apply for the ROSPA safety awards that they do every year, and we gradually built up our submissions to get a gold award, and then after 5 years we ended up getting a gold medal award. But that in itself gave us the starting point for the improvements that we needed to make. And by the time we got to the gold medal, once we went for the standard, it was just a case of filling in some minor gaps. So yeah, I think if you're doing the right things and you're documenting them, you're probably further along any accreditation process than you might think you are.
Yeah, fabulous. What about you then, Matt? What's your sort of take on that?
In terms of growth, I think yes, we have grown in the period that we've been a B Corp. I think that's down to lots of things. I think Jamie will have probably a better sense of, I know for a fact that B Corps are amongst the fastest growing companies there are. So, it's probably not exactly the right statement, but that's close. But for us, I think the benefits to growth, I think more than anything, it gave us a really clear framework for some of our decision making. Some of the decision making we made at kind of strategic level. There's a backdrop to that. You can say, well, as a B Corp, what does that mean? And then the answers are often there within the structure of what you've been through the assessment and the accreditation. But it gives you this kind of great kind of framework for decision making, prioritization. I think internally, I think it's given us a really good sense of our shared purpose. And I think that has been a driver towards us becoming an EO business as well, employee-owned business too. I was having a debate with someone whether we would have become employee-owned if we hadn't been a B Corp. And there's lots of things, of course, involved. Externally, I think it gives you a kind of an increase in the trust with clients and collaborators in that area if you're working where you're working. And I think it helps us articulate when we're talking about the business, what we do. It helps us articulate our value beyond the project, how we're going to do it, etc. It's that value thing. And I also think it helps us recruit. I think it's been a great kind of provide us a great ability to recruit talent. They come to interview with a great knowledge of B Corp and want to know more about us. And I think that's a value thing. You get that sense that people want to work for us because they're bought into that whole approach to doing business in a different way. So yeah, internal
that's a
and
great
external.
insight. Yeah, that's a great insight, particularly in sort of today's world where recruitment is a challenge for all organisations, getting the right skills, having that badge attracting certain people, and you know they've got the similar mindset to you. I think that's a great bonus, that probably an unintended outcome. I like that. Jamie, Paul, can you add something to this about, you know, the growth or what it's allowed organisations to achieve?
Absolutely. And just kind of echoing what Matthew's just shared there, it's, you know, this whole thing around recruitment. It's kind of an ongoing lovely joke within the B Corp community now, because there's this thing of once you've worked for a B Corp, then you just keep looking for other B Corps to work for once you're then, because of the ethos, the kind of the trust that exists within that.
Yeah.
And that's also an added benefit, is B Corps love working with other B Corps, not because it's cliquey, but because of there's a trust there. They go, actually, we know you've gone through this rigorous standard. We know that this isn't just lip service that you're paying to how you look at your supply chain, how are you working with your stakeholders. They understand that it's somebody that they can trust is actually doing that. So it makes it a lot simpler for companies to find businesses that they feel comfortable kind of working with. And in terms of this recruitment piece, a completely unexpected thing that's happened in the last couple of years is that we're seeing the B Corp directory actually being used almost as a recruitment tool, especially for people under the age of 26. So they're looking at the B Corp directory and going, right, what are the companies that are B Corp certified that exist within the industry I'm interested in? Go and have a look at those. Are any of them hiring? And we've seen kind of a bit of a flourishing resurgence of recruitment agencies specializing in recruiting to B Corps, because there has been that interest in it. Now, things that we know kind of from our clients is to echo what Matt was saying around purpose, and people that we work with, you know, Simply Health, they are a B Corp, and it's something that they absolutely value, is they use purpose as a cornerstone of their decision making. They have it up in their walls in their office, and they make business decisions that sometimes can be less profitable, and they fully admit that, because it's the right thing to do that's aligned to their purpose. Now, would they have it done that anyway without B Corp? Possibly, yeah, because actually that's just part of who they are. But for them, the clarity that's come from going through that as a process, and then also kind of this ongoing iteration of development and changes, has supported that. And, you know, a smaller company that we've worked with, it's called Warren's Office, they're based in Winchester, you know, they talk about it as this renaissance for their business, and actually it's completely unintended consequence of going through the process. But then you see other people, you know, companies like Ticket Tailor. So everyone has probably heard about Eventbrite, but hopefully you've heard about this incredible company called Ticket Tailor that do exactly the same thing. You know, so Johnny, who's the founder of Ticket Tailor, when we worked with him, the reason he wanted to go after B Corp was to help kind of use it as a tool to transform his industry, so to transform this kind of tech sector. And he's really proud of the fact that when he goes to talk at tech conferences, he's not talking about his tech and his latest innovation. He's talking about purpose, how it's embedded with his team, and how that's mobilizing resilience with his company. And, you know, there are lots of great statistics that exist around kind of resilience through COVID, actually how we see different things evolving. But fundamentally, you know, we would never say that it's because of B Corp that this has happened. What we would always say is that it's because they've asked the right questions, they've gone through this process. There are certain things that do happen because of B Corp in terms of community aspect, and in terms of exactly like Matthew was saying, you know, having certain accreditations does unlock certain doors. But fundamentally, if you're asking yourself those right questions, that's the key in all of this.
Yeah, it's a way of being, isn't it? It just helps you showcase to the world that this is our ethos. I think it's a nice accreditation for that sort of means.
Absolutely. And it also helps to, I don't know about the rest of you, I love what I do. It's probably coming across as how I speak. And I spend a lot of time, as Paul likes to call me, embracing my inner geek, diving down little rabbit warrens of data. And even for me, the language that we can sometimes use, the amount of legislation shift that's happening for businesses, they kind of nationally, internationally at the moment, it can be overwhelming. So the intent with a lot of these actions as well is making it possible, tangible, actionable. And that's really what any company needs to see.
I meet with lots of organisations, and a little bit like Lee, many of them are in many industries, and almost to play in some of those industries, you have to have the industry accreditation to even get onto a framework to practice in those areas. And we had a group of manufacturing business together in a room and having a discussion around sort of the challenges that come along with maintaining accreditations, especially when you're in a diverse range of industries, because it almost comes a full-time job for somebody to be accreditations to make sure you're up to speed. And everyone, although they're very similar, they're all slightly different. So you can't just pick and mix the slight nuances within all of them. So as you mature and you get more and more, almost how do you cope with all of those challenges in your organisation? Who'd like to pick that one up? I think it's quite a big question.
I will, if I may.
Yeah,
You can view the ongoing, requirements of a certification like B
yeah,
Corp or ISO as from a compliance lens. As okay, we're going to need to we've done this now. We're going to need to do it again in a 3 years or whatever the time period might be. But actually, the better companies go, well, actually, it's live, let's use it. Some B Corps have, it's that person's job to not be the B Corp manager, but when new initiatives come in across the business around sustainability, they'll go to that person and say, how does this stack up against, the B Corp framework? And so it's, as Jamie talked about lenses earlier, it's just about embracing it daily and continually. And then actually we'll find that when it does come around to the recertification audit, actually it's a lot easier because you've just been doing this. It's not something to do because you've gone on a journey and you've got that accreditation and let's celebrate and then put it in the bottom drawer for 2 years. No, actually, just continue it to build on that longer term work because some of these things will be longer term that use it to guide and help you to empower the work that you want to do, rather than thinking of it as yes, it's something we've got to revisit and do. And the better accreditations will allow that growth internally of allowing you to flourish as businesses to go, yeah, it's that guide, it's that check, those guardrails, if you like, for us to carry on doing what we're doing, rather than that's something we've got some more boxes to tick in a few months' time. Definitely not that.
yeah. I think a good organisation who's doing them for the right thing always see that, don't they? I think it just comes to life that way. Thank you for those insights. I'm conscious now we've got quite a few questions and some of them are really specific rather than quite general. So if I just nip down a few of the questions, please, any of the panel, jump in. I think there was one. If a company has, I think it's from Paul Everington, if a company has ISO 9001 and investors in people, what does B Corp add? That's a good question.
I'm happy to jump on this one if that helps. So a lot of B Corps do have other standards as well. It's not saying it's this or something else at all. I think I kind of reflect back on one of my earlier points around it's how it looks at everything holistically, especially with the new standards as well. So Matthew beautifully articulated the process that we have been going through and have been using kind of for the last 6 years with version 6 of the standards. And there's been quite a big shift that's actually been a work in progress for the last 5 years that's taken into account absolute feedback from B Corps, UN Global Compact's been involved, researchers have been involved, there's been public audits of it as well, that four different public audits of the new standards to build something that is more future-proof and more relevant to the conversations we're having in today's society. So particularly to that question around ISOs and other elements, we've seen like EcoVadis or Future Plus and different elements come through. That is absolutely taken into account within the B Corp certification. So if you are perhaps a manufacturer and you use fair trade products or organic certified products, all of that is reflected within the assessment.
Yeah.
The key difference is that these are very hyper-focused accreditations that you're looking at. So each of the ISOs, if I take ISO 17298, for example, that's the biodiversity one, that specifically looks at, as a business, how are you addressing biodiversity net gain? How are you looking specifically to influence that? But that can be one part of this wider piece of what you're doing as an organization. And that's the key difference is it brings it all together. So on new standards, Matthew said that earlier, we had 5 sections previously. That's now evolved into 7. So that looks at everything from still your purpose and your stakeholder governance. It looks at climate action. It's looking at fair wages. It's looking at justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's looking at also how you kind of governing change and how you kind of using your voice as a force for good as well. So I won't dive into all the details of it, but that's kind of a key shift with it. And another key shift is it's no longer points based. So in the past, as B Corps, you could be doing incredibly well in how you're looking at your staff. An employee ownership model like Matthew and the team have is absolutely just incredible for any company to work through. So you can do incredibly well at workers, but perhaps maybe you just haven't looked at the environment section. The big shift with B Corp now is that it's not points based. You have to answer a minimum standard across all of the 7 new areas. The reason for that is there is this reflection, especially from the United Nations, that for businesses to operate in what we need now, we need them to be looking at every sector of their company and be doing a minimum level across all of these different areas that we're talking about to really keep using this word galvanize. You get a word stuck in your head, don't you? To galvanize this change. And that's, I think, the beauty of it. So ISO 9001, 14001, all these different subsections, BREEAM, if you're working within the building, all these different elements are taken into account as part of B Corp. It doesn't replace any of them. The key difference is this big holistic overview.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know. I'm really conscious of time, and I just want to give our panel a final say on a piece of advice or something that you want to tell the audience. So I'll quickly go round. I'll start with you, Matthew. Is there something you'd like to say in words of inspiration for the audience?
Oh, words of inspiration. Okay. I don't think don't be put off by the the depth and the complexity of it. Dip your toe in, have a go. It's not a shortcut to winning loads of new work and or improving your performance overnight, but I think there's a value that comes with it. And I think there's it really does, B Corp for us really does reflect that genuine kind of operational change and the purpose we have as a business. So if you're wanting to articulate that, it's a great thing to help you measure it. It's not in itself the driving purpose of the business. It is the measure of it, and is a framework for helping us support the endeavors and initiatives that we have and understand them better. So have a go.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Matthew. Lee, you got any words of wisdom?
Not really. No, I would agree with Matthew. I think have a go. I think somebody's put in the questions that what happens if you apply and initially fail? Well, you won't fail, will you? You will just have learned something that you can apply next time. And I think that's the way you should attack it. Just have a go and you'll learn something.
I'd add to that. I don't think you can fail. Because you don't press the submit button until you really know you're going to pass. You're going to meet the standards. So in a way, you can't fail. It's something to work. And even if you don't end up pressing the submit button and committing to the cost of certification, you'll have learned a lot about your business along the way. So yeah, there is a cost involved. There is a cost involved in the certification and the fees, which is tiered based on the size of your business. There's investment in time from leadership and from other people involved, but it's all proportionate to the size of your business. Yeah.
Fabulous. Quick one from you, Paul, and then I'll finally come to Jamie.
Yeah, thank you. Well, firstly, of course, there are costs involved in actually certifying, but it is totally free and as simple as you like to actually get going and explore the framework, which has sort of been alluded to in a couple of questions, to register your business. The B Corp framework is free and doesn't commit you to anything at all, so you are welcome to go and explore away. What my piece of advice is, just start, get involved. Certainly B Corp, it's joyous. It is so much fun. And you might not think I'd say that about an accreditation, But it will do wonders for your business in expected ways and in unexpected ways as well. So please do go and explore. And if you've got any questions, we'd also be happy to answer them as well. Subsequently, I'm sure plenty of you have.
Thank you. And Jamie, words of wisdom?
To be honest, I think I thought the same face as me when Paul said fun. It is fun in lots of different ways, like when you're curious about your business and how you want to explore it. And when you suddenly start kind of digging into things and looking at what you want to do. Words of wisdom. I think, to be honest, my lovely co-panelists here have given fantastic words of wisdom. Things, if I may say, is that think of it like a driving test. Whatever it is you're going to, you know you want to find a different way of moving forward, getting around, right? You start to learn to drive. And then perhaps when you go to take your test, there are some things that come back and go, oh, these are your minors and these are your majors. The major elements you go away and you work on, and this time round, you don't go through that next barrier, but actually it's giving you something to learn from. It's the same thing with definitely the new kind of B Corp standards. There's these minors and majors, but with anything that you're looking to do, the reason that you're on this call and the reason that you're asking these great questions is because you are curious. If I give any tip, I say don't underestimate the power of curiosity, and sometimes just let that energize the conversation that you're looking to have. Fundamentally, these are all different parts of your business strategy. It is about adding resilience. This isn't about, I had a really great question from somebody the other day when I was sat on a panel that was like, why should I give a about this green stuff? And I said, because it's not just green stuff. Actually, it's a really great question. It's about the people that are existing in your life. It's about all the different key elements that work. They're kind of like magnets. If you start moving one magnet, everything else starts shifting around it. So start with embracing the curiosity and what's the one small shift that you can make that can have an incredible cascade across everything else, and just see where that leads you.
Well, great words of wisdom from everybody. I just want to say thank you for the panelists coming along today and answering some of those questions and giving your experience and insight. I think it's been amazing. Thank you for your questions. I'm not sure we've answered every single one of them, but we can take those away and type those up and send them back, and they'll maybe come around with the recording from this session. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I know we're a couple of minutes over, but I think it's been worthwhile. There will be a survey that will pop up, and we do have one slide we just want to share with you, and that is an invitation. As you know, we've got the Alumni Conference coming up next Thursday, so if you are coming to that, I'd love to meet with you. If you're there, I'd say hello. I'll be there with everybody. A great networking event, and then if you just go to the next slide, Camilla, there's some additional deep dive workshops that are now live from the business schools across the UK. So there's some QR codes on the screen there. So if some of those are of interest to you, please do scan them, but we will share them as well post the webinar. And thank you everyone for your time. Really enjoyed today. It's gone so fast. And have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.